So you can see here on the networks part, get resource, so a reference to another resource. And if you want to run commands inside that VM after creation, Cloud Init is the place for that. So I added here a piece that does some operations using Cloud Init. Something interesting here would be, you see we pass the whole host name and define it to be the same name as the stack for consistency. You can see a little bit below the mount. You don't have it here, sorry.
What's that? Oh,
it's something in another example. I just,
okay.
I'll show later.
Hey, Fonzo.
Yeah.
If you put the get resources call, will he enforce the order if you use that? Like my port, we're going to make sure the port's created first.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a great point. So the way it works is all these types have dependencies, and dependencies would come as components of the definition of that item. So, for example, as we define the server and we get the resource my port, the port needs to be created. Only after the port is created, you can finalize the creation of the server. So it's like you have different threads for each one of the components, and when the preconditions are consumed, then you can create following the graph of these dependencies. If you've tried to create these components using, let's say, Python, did anybody try this kind of stuff before? Like just write a Python program that creates a whole networks, routers. So you've probably seen how take a lot of care on the dependencies among all these items. So a little bit more details on some other types. Here you have a network. And again, we use the convention for name. You see string replace, parameters. So it would receive the name of the stack and substitute and create stack_net. And that's the name of the network you're creating. For the subnet, we're adding the name servers for Google so that you can have external name resolution. You also have a router interface and port, including security groups. So for example, if you want to create a VM and a network that would allow you to SSH and ping, you need to add to your security group ICMP and SSH TCP port 22. Something also interesting if you're creating infrastructure is creation of volumes and attaching a volume to a server. And in order to create a volume and attach to a server, you would do something like the piece at the top under volume. A FIP, how would you create a floating IP from your external network? You can see here on the FIP piece. And another, depending on the kind of usage you make, that might be of interest is DNS record. So you can name your machine and associate to the floating IP that you've got defined on the FIP piece.
That's if you have designate as part of your cloud.
Yeah, yeah. So, and interesting comment. So designate was only added in Liberty. So different OpenStack releases would have different labels. Remember on the beginning when we have here the template version? Only on this version you started to have support for designate.
Came back to the version question. If you're on a later, let's say we moved to the Taka, you had a template that was still labeled with the Liberty version, would it still work and just go into Liberty?
Yes. So a label defines a set of functionality. And you can see from like the history of changes that they started removing functionality that's imitates Amazon's syntax. So if you look at very old definitions of heap templates, it has a more CloudFormation look. But I think for deprecation, it would go very slow. Yes. Okay, so I'll show some demos so that you get an idea of the flow of using heat. Basically, we start by defining our OpenStack variables. I'm filtering the password out here so that you don't get my big secret. Very basic example here. So here I'll define something called a resource group. With a resource group, you can pretty much create a collection. So in our case, I just stripped down the example, and you'd see a set of VMs being created. Then you can, with a stack created, change that size of the resource group. So if you go, the syntax here is you have a type resource group, and that type is a collection of OS Nova servers. And I created also a name that indexes the items that you have. As an output, you would see the list of names that were created. So it's in the process of creating, and I didn't change the default, so you would have two servers on this stack. So you can see the outputs, output value server 0 and server 1. Another way, so I used OpenStack stack create, OpenStack stack show now to show all the parameters for that. You can be more specific about about what are the output parameters in this case. Well, the list just contains server. And here you see the two servers that were created in this resource group. So with the stack already created, I would like to show an update. You have an update. And with this flag existing, you only modify what is there. You don't need to pass the whole template again to the comment.
And if anybody wants to grab a bag of chips, thanks, Randy.
So the first stack, the first definition of the stack, we create a resource group with two items, two servers. Now I'm updating this stack, keeping the same template, and modifying the number of servers to 5 instead of 2. So as I forgot to do wait, you can do OpenStack stack list. This would be show all your currently running stacks. So you see that the update is in progress. Wow, good. The update is complete now. And you can see that now you have 5 different servers.
What happens if you pass a lower number, like 3? Will it do anything?
Let's see.
I'm curious.
I think you backspaced over it. Yeah.
That's it.
Count.
So the answer is, so this is interesting because let's suppose you have a system that is getting overloaded. You have a method to increase the pool of servers that you're using. So I'll show now a little bit of how you would see the heat resources using Horizon. So here is a list of the stacks that you have created for this project. The example was created 5 minutes ago, and the status is update complete.
What does the check stack there do? Just validates that it meets.
So all the resources
It's a,
are there that you asked for.
it's a motivational thing.
I think if you
You're doing good.
if you manually deleted one of those servers, I think the check stack would tell you something wrong.
Yeah, and you have option to validate the stack too before you load. Just to go through, there are command line options for that. But then you can see over here, overview of the stack, the resources that compose it, the events. So if we go here,
So most recent
yeah, you can see
top.
from
Okay.
yeah, from the oldest to the most recent at the top. I think there is a better example to show more infrastructure. So another example that I would like to show you is, so we currently have this example 1, and it's loaded. We would So this is a frustrating example for me, and it's a bug that I need to resolve in our infrastructure. So I'm using it as an example of what do you see when the creation failed. So in this case, you can see the stack started being created, and then a failure was detected. Cannot get stack domain user token, misconfigured, fix your heap.conf. So the stack is created, but it's failed. You can also see.
So if you do OpenStack lists, okay.
Show, for example, would show the creation status and the message. In this case, this is an interesting case. In this case, you would, so again, it's only creating a server, and it defines a wait condition. Let's suppose you're creating a server, doing a lot of software installation, and only after all your installation steps, you want your heat stack to report success up. The method to do that, to get your what you executed inside your VM to communicate back to the stack, this condition would be a wait condition handled. So when the software that is running inside the VM is ready, you would send a notify, as you can see here, wait condition notify, that would post to a URL. Another, so again, if you run list, you would see you have two stacks, one created and complete, and the other failed.
Do you know why that failed?
We saw the message, right?
Right. Outside of the message, do you actually know what's telling you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. We need to define a domain ID on our heat.conf file, so that we would be able to use the wait conditions.
Yeah, because wait states and autoscale groups, and there's something else, need username and passwords, because it calls back into the CloudFormation, and it, under normal Keystone and before Kilo, it used to do that by creating a user in Keystone, So if your keystone was back to a read-only AD source or LDAP or something like that, they added a new feature that it also came under Kilo, where you can create a domain and then have a different backing store for that domain. So you can create a domain specifically for key users to be created in.
Yeah.
And then you configure key to use that new domain to create the wait users. Yeah. Otherwise, this all fell apart very quickly if you had read-only backing users.
We would not have this tool. We don't have anything but one domain and have to worry about what it's going to do to everything data center. But it's on the list.
It was not.
Yeah. We've had it
Basically.
for a while.
It didn't do anything for us.
After that.
Our biggest problem was Keystone V3 and then Puppet creating things under V3 that don't show up under V2. So like we eventually blew up some HTTP header or something because our Puppet stuff under V3 was adding a whole bunch of service catalog entries or something like that didn't show up under V2. So
Yeah. One for thousands of them.
yeah.
So now an example that would show a little bit of a more complete scenario. So the idea here would be to create a whole network, router, network, subnet, everything, floating IP, and a name, and then you would be able to ping and to SSH into that machine. So here, some of the parameters that this stack would receive. We'll create a key pair. We'll pass the image name, flavor name, the designate domain. So here, this is pretty much like what we saw before. We have a router, network, net, server. So this is some small tricks that we needed to do to fix stuff for SSH. So it's more operations that we run on the VM after it's created. And we attach a volume, and mount point is dev VDD. FIP, like the example, DNS record, and then we output the IP address of the VM that we create. Yeah.
So a question about dependencies and like timing. Does
Uh-huh.
the cloud init run like after all this infrastructure side stuff happens? Because your cloud init is looking for dev VDD, but then later on you actually attach that volume. Assuming that cloud init must run at the end.
In this case, what it does, what this code does is, so the answer is not. Cloud init would run after the VM is created. Yeah. So
But the volume's created before that.
Right.
exactly,
Volume's
yeah.
created
But the VM creation depends on the
Yeah.
volume creation, so it kind of
The
cascades.
BDD is there.
All right. Yeah, when I did my bash non-key version of this, that's exactly right. Okay.
So that's why in this case that is polling in the script, because you can't make this sure.
Can you scroll down to your volume somewhere?
Is there anything specific?
I was just
Matt.
curious because your your server depends on the volume, right?
Yes.
Not the attachment. That's why you have to have a little bit of delay. You can't have the server depend on the attachment because the attachment requires the server to exist.
If you used to write a node root command, wouldn't you attach the volume in the node root command?
You can.
That may be what he does. I don't know. You just can't put a dependency there because it's user.
In your Cloud init, are you formatting that volume?
So
Yeah.
we just do,
Yep, I see it.
yeah. So I added this because I started having problems with, so in some work that we have that uses VMs created in a process very similar to that, you'd have pings going to the VM and disk writes to kind of validate that you have that item able to receive the pings and to write to the disk. And if we did not have a chunk like we have here on the Cloud init, and Cloud init is a whole other thing, then you would have a lot of failures and you would not be able to access this SCP test directory that is a precondition for the other piece. So, and the last part here is the output is just the IP address for the server. In this example, as we have more parameters, I just wrote the command here. You can see this is the domain that I have, this is the name that I'm using for the stack. And at the end of the stack creation, we're creating the stack with a wait. So when you get to the next line after the OpenStack stack create, you would be able to read what's the IP address that was created for it. So
Wait is just hang here until it's complete, right?
yes, because for example, let's suppose you want to create a bunch of stacks at once and not wait until the first one finishes creation to start the other one. So everything is created in parallel. So then when you reach the export IP line, the IP would have already been created. And this piece here is just reading the output value from the result of OpenStack stack output. Also, this stack creates the name based on the name of the stack, appending the domain. So you can have here the full name. It's how by passing here the domain name.
So it'll be example03.franza project.
Yeah. So we can good. So I forgot to create the key pair, and we will do it right now. So let's see if we have better luck now. So see here that the creation of the items you have in heat are going in parallel. Items showing creating progress, and then when their preconditions are filled, the item can be completed, and then it goes all the way down until the last in the dependency graph. So, Matt, you mentioned the volume attachment, right? And where would it be in the definition? the server was here created before the volume attachment. So your idea seems to have happened here. So there are command line options to show details of this, but I would show on Horizon. So now we're in the third stack, and this example is better because you can see more pieces. Or not. So you'd have the floating IP, the IP association. This is the port. This is the server, the volume and the volume attachment. This is the DNS. That would be the router, and the router interface, subnet. You can also see here. This is not specific to heat, but if you want to see the, sorry. The topology that was created with this example. You have a server, a network, a router, and then the external network. So here's the IP that we created. We can ping it. And we can connect to the machine.
Type last. Okay. Just checking something. I'll tell you later.
The security group that we used allows ping and allows SSH. You can also, I think I called full name. So you see the name resolution is happening correctly. Or same thing. It's very helpful. Remember when we saw the method to name the types, that we do a substitution from the name of the stack to name pieces in a way that is consistent with the name of your stack. It can be very helpful if you want to do, let's suppose you had some problem, some debugging you want to do on the creation of your VM. You can do I named the server with the name of the stack _ server. So it's here, it exists for Novan. And if you want to see details of how this creation happened, if there was any failure, any funny condition, then you can see the whole operating system initialization here. So if we get back to So back to that stack, the events. It's just another interface for the events and for the list of resources that were created in that stack. You can see here all the types that were created.
So your stack could use existing resources, though? You don't have to create a new network, or do you?
You don't need to. So let's suppose you want to just pass a network or a router. You would pass the UUID, and then you read that parameter. So the same that you have get resource, you would be using get parameter.
Okay.
But it's the same thing. It understands that ID is the right type and does things accordingly.
Your example, you actually has that for security group, using pre-existing, and for XNet, for external network, right?
Yeah. So it's a good point. So for example, you see in my stack, I just pointed to a predefined security group. And why do I do that? I create lots of heat stacks dynamically, create and delete in order to put together the virtual machines to run these health checks that we have. So heat would define a procedure. There would be some type that would allow you to define a security group. But it doesn't make sense to do this for every.
They're all the same.
Yeah, if what you're defining is the same, and that gets us to like what are the constraints, the drawbacks of an approach like this. I find heat very helpful to create infrastructure. Let's say you want to build a bunch of stuff, then you'd have a language to put all this stuff together. But if you want to just make modifications to that, it's not a language that would be able to include big specifications of change. So these changes you end up doing, like we saw in the very first example where you have a heat stack update. So your change would need to be made as updates. For example, scaling up and down, a pool of servers, or upgrading the image that you're loading there. It's another possibility. You can just
Change the size of the VM.
change the size of the VM. Yeah. So these are the kind of operations that you can take these decisions dynamically. Let's say some sort of a check that happens in another context.
Auto scaling or
Yeah.
Well, auto scaling is another.
but I mean you can auto scale this though.
So
Maybe from external monitors that trigger it.
So one thing is a little bit more complicated example. Let's see how can So I can show you something here. So this is the tool user that we have, and in this case, this is our lab. So there are just 10 different nodes, and if we log as the other user, so the idea for this monitor project was to create a VM that looks a lot like this VM that we saw in the example 3, to be able to ping it and to write to its disk, and to have health checks that are reporting this capacity. So if you get here, you see a list of all the compute nodes that we have running the Nova Compute. And we can so for each one of these, we create a heat stack whose name is just substitution. You see, BFD02 compute or compute trove. And we create heat stacks that are named following the convention. And if you need to, if that system is down and you need to clean the stack, everything associated is just labeled by that name with Sentinel. So you can always have this direct association between the compute node and the Sentinel that is running there.
You should delete a Sentinel.
Yeah, let's do it. This is not production, so we have hundreds of these Sentinels on our production system. And we have a cron job that every 5 minutes checks pretty much what we show here, the Nova service. So which compute services are up, and make sure that for each one of them there is a Sentinel running. So if we come here and
what we're doing from the Sentinels is just verifying customer view that ping works, and
It's basically, it's exactly set up to simulate what a customer environment looks like, customer availability, customer hypervisor availability, customer volume attach availability, ephemeral volume, all that.
We have other checks for API calls that customers don't make API calls that much.
right, you're checking the data plane.
so
Yeah.
another way to answer your question is this is our Isinga, the monitoring system. And these are the 2 checks for each compute node. One would see check the disk I/O, and the other the FIP access that is pinging.
Did you delete one? We should have it right here. Now we'll have it right here.
Okay, so we deleted one, and we should start seeing it here.
Might need to recheck it.
Yeah.
So we can just, I think it waits a little bit. So this check is every 1.5 minutes. And actually that is a better way to show this.
So how are you getting a Sentinel per node? Are you using the availabilities?
AZ is the only way we can do it, I think. Yep.
Okay. So
You've got AZ, you've got
Yeah.
availability zone in
Yeah.
your template, right?
So you're creating the stacks as user then.
Yep. That's the way we can do it.
Exactly right. So it's not completely like a customer in that way.
Just because you're targeting a specific.
Right.
And then
Right.
it'll know, like, if we evacuate one of those hosts, and it'll realize, like, I have Sentinel 2, which is now on compute 3, that doesn't make any sense.
We don't nuke it, we just move it to another node when we evac.
We back a host.
Yeah.
So it'll go read that old one.
And it'll basically self-clean.
So
So
that wasn't part of the talk, but that's why we're using this.
yeah, so here, that's how we specify the,
Right, I saw where it said X property needs admin privileges. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Why would you?
does it? But now it makes sense.
In our environment, it does, yeah.
so
Just availability zone, not with the colon host.
It's got the host, yeah. It's Nova colon the name of the host. That's the availability zone he's using.
So you don't expose.
We don't have different availabilities. We only have a single.
So this is most probably the one that we destroyed, and the results you see here for ping and disk are not executed here, are just reading the results that came from the monitoring system. So it takes a little bit more time until they would say okay here, because it would only say
gotta
okay
fail.
when it's bringing back on the monitoring system. And in the case of the tool here, there is another use of heat. That is, we pretty much drive the heat template creation and modification and deletion based on the Python client. So if you're doing more complicated stuff, then shell is kind of very hard to maintain, and we ended up using the Python clients for that.
Is there a Python column heat or heat column your Python client?
The Python calls the heat Python package.
His Python imports the Python-heat client.
Okay.
I thought we were using Shade.
Yes, I'm using Shade. I can show here. So I use this library Shade.
Is our password in this file?
And pretty much Shade would have methods that simplify the creation of different OpenStack clients. So, if you do Neutron and you do Keystone, each one of these clients would have something peculiar about the way you create the client object, and Shade, kind of hides that a little bit. It has a bunch of other problems, but that's the beautiful part of the story. But yeah, the idea here is you would start a stack creation for each one of the compute nodes and just get it all going in parallel, and then kind of collect later, make sure that everything was created.
Which I can hold on to, but before I forget, you had a bash snippet earlier. I think it was in the cloud init thing that WC notify. Is that like a command that's in the cloud init package that's on VM?
No. Let me get back there. I can show you.
That was the wait condition.
Yes, it doesn't work yet.
Does WC Notify require the CloudFormation stuff to be installed?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, we don't have.
It just needs to fix the configuration issue that you were talking
I don't
about.
think we have cloud formations.
We don't.
I think we turned it off. We weren't using.
No, like inside the,
In the VM.
yeah, because there is stuff, at least early on Heat, when you did the AWS compatible stuff, and they came out with the hot template, you had to install the CloudFormation tools.
In your
And-
VM.
Yeah, they need to be in the image because it used those binaries to do, well, the shell scripts or whatever.
Yeah.
To do stuff.
I think this dependency is cleared out.
It's not a cloud init. This is running on the server.
Yeah, this is something else. Your question on the wait condition notify, right? So you have WC notify here, and WC notify is defined above here. So what it does is it does a curl to a URL that will be created on this wait condition / wait condition handle definition. So it pretty much internally creates a URL where when you call WC notify, there will be a post to that URL when the right condition has happened. So it's not a bash thing. It's just included here and defined here under parameters. So the way to think about the wait condition is you need to see this, all these pieces together. So it doesn't have a meaning if it's not following the syntax.
So you're saying it's replacing WC notify in the template part with what would be curl and then the curl URL?
Yeah. So this curl CLI would be created on the wait handle type above. Yeah. So when the object is created, some long URL will be created, and the whole curl command is part of it. You don't need to see it because you just need to make the use of it.
Yeah. So if we looked at the user data, we'd see the full, like an actual bash type script without WC notify, curl, URL, all that other stuff.
If you have it created in your system, then you set the configuration, right? You can just make an output piece and just print this curl URL CLI. Then you can see and write. Anybody has other questions or comments about Heat, or share experience about your utilization?
I was going to ask earlier, so Chris can raise his hand. Who has used Heat before? Okay, so
I've used it enough to get it working. Yeah. Were you going to do an example of including a Heat template as a resource in another Heat template?
I don't have any good here that I can show you right away. I can point you to.
Yeah, I can show them. Oh, afterwards you show them the WordPress one.
To
It's on GitHub.
I think.
I don't know tabs. It's in public GitHub. Oh, he's got one too.
Tom has.
I bet your Elk one includes Elasticsearch masters.
Yeah. So you can see here. Just because I'm showing them, this is not the good one. Did you see?
I thought I did. Resource group, the bonus servers, where resource def,
that's
bonus servers.yaml.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of easier to see a real one, but pretty much you reference it as a type, and the type is pretty much what's in that file. And then you can pass parameters using the same convention and everything as you have on just a standalone template.
Yeah, and then the properties you put there basically get, if I remember right, those get passed in as parameters to the Heat template of the other one, but it's also inherent properties from the master template, I thought. Or maybe you have to pass, I don't remember if you pass everything or if the lower stack can see the upper stacks for parameters as well. So like you can define network without passing network as a property.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I don't have the answer on the top.
I thought you had to pass it.
Okay.
So then this is like a stack of stacks?
Yeah.
Or it, okay. It doesn't appear as just one giant.
I think it should do it.
Do you want to show yours?
Mine's a lot simpler than this. It's on regular GitHub.
Yeah, like when I was doing this, my complaint was the resource group, the entire thing for the Substack shows up as just a resource group, so it's just like a box.
Yeah, no, you're
So
right.
it doesn't tree it out like
It's under my name.
for me.
GitHub, yeah.
2 T's.
I got 2 T's. So we did this as an example for customers, and it's like a how to do WordPress with a dynamic front end and back end.
Is it called Waka 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 or Kawa Kawa Kawa?
You're gonna have to do those. I don't even remember.
Probably called it WordPress or something. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I wouldn't put it here, right?
Is it in TWC?
But not OpenStack Orchestration.
Change your
Why am I
order.
not looking at your screen? So yeah, I just did a backend and a front end resource group. Each one has n number of servers, and then each one has its own router and its own network and its own subnet and its own, because a resource group is a functional unit of a server, a volume, a network, a floating IP, a subnet, a router, a volume attachment, and a FIP. And I want to tell customers, you can make one backend server for WordPress, you can make 50, you can make 1 million, and in the front end, you can have one front end, you can have 3, you can have any combination of 2. But the main template is really simple. It does things that you don't want to change, like we talked about. So one router for everybody, one main network for everybody. I think I ended up with one subnet, but 2 router interfaces, and then I did 2 security groups because I don't want to scale. If I do 3 servers, I don't want 3 security groups. But then I used and we use anti-FIP to be honest. So, but there's your thing. Backend nodes just calls that, and I just pass in everything I need here, I think. And then front end is here, and then like the front end backend code. At the time, I was actually installing software with Heat under front end and back end. And I decided that was horrible. The main reason being that when you want to install something like WordPress, you need to set up the backend servers first so you can get MySQL running. Then you need to collect all the IP addresses of the MySQL servers and somehow pass them in to the front end because WordPress needs to know how to talk to the database. And like pulling data out of one thing in Heat and passing it to another using Heat's syntax is awful. You can use something like Python or whatever, right, to wrap it. But I said, forget it. I just use Ansible. So I translate this. I have a thing that takes the output of this and dumps it to a host file, and then Ansible just pulls it on there. If I did it again, I'd still do it that way. I think Heat's not good at installing software.
Yeah.
And Ansible, the templates can be idempotent. So I want to change the version of WordPress. I can like run my Ansible again, and Heat's just. I don't know how you back from Heat and say, I know you already have a server and know it's already there, but I want you to change this one line in this one file. Like, there's no way to do it. So, right. Anyway, that's my opinion. This is all public.
So you were reading my mind there about Ansible and Heat. Can you show some examples of what you've done with that?
This is a great example. Unfortunately, the wiki page I wrote for this is oh, did I put a readme in here? That says nothing yet.
What does it say? TBD?
It says like, this is what this is. Yeah, so basically, you run that WordPress template, and you get a server, and you get an n number of servers, whatever. I think the default is 2 front, 2 back. And I literally wrote this shell script, and all this does is say, find all the servers named backend, and drop them into one specific section of a host file called Galera. If you know Ansible, if you don't know Ansible, this probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So sorry. If you find anything called front end, put it in a section called WordPress. And then my Ansible templates basically know, for example, Galera runs on host called Galera, right? And WordPress runs on host called WordPress. And this is completely hacky, right? But it completely works too.
Right up until you create another server called backend in that.
Yes,
in
you
that.
shouldn't do that.
That's why you should create a new project. Yeah.
So I think our team has kind of adopted to some extent either if you want Heat to do something really complicated that involves inputs and outputs and managing multiple stacks, like write in Python, or have Heat do all the infra work and have Ansible do all the software work. Either one of those 2 options is what we like, I think. Or, I know Heat has like software configs and all this stuff, but I don't think it's very mature. And the Heat documentation is especially poor for OpenStack. Examples are extremely hard to come by.
Any resource outputs, like what outputs a resource has, is not great.
The format the output comes in is like in one way, I remember I filed a bug on this. Like in one way, it comes in a list, and then to pass it in, it needs to be like a different type. But if I want to do it in pure heat, like how am I going to translate that? There's no. So the main people that use heat, I believe, just based on reading stuff, is the O guys. So if you have a bug that suits their use case, they'll fix it, I think. But
we want to do conditionals inside heat. That's the big thing we're trying to do. So we want to get it so we provide multiple availability zones, and we ask our customers to build their application across those availability zones, mainly for maintenance reasons. So when we get thousands of hypervisors, we don't have to do one hypervisor at a time for infinity years.
Yep.
So the problem is we can have some zones are getting built out, so they might have one availability.
Franz, did you know
some might
Chris,
have
by the
two,
way?
might have three.
Chris works for GoDaddy, as does Mike,
Columns.
in Fort Collins, and Mike works in Denver. And they're longtime members of the OpenStack meetup, but I wasn't sure you guys had ever met in Austin. So when he says things, real cloud, big public cloud.
When Chris says things, listen.
So how did you address the conditionals?
Tell people not to use heat. I mean, the fact of the matter is you can't do it. So,
Yeah, exactly.
we also did some other things where you can, so if people don't care about what availability zone they run in, because that shards kind of our cloud up, they just want AVM anywhere, you can pass in comma-separated availability zones. So you can say, like, I want zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and that's basically the same as passing no availability zone. But we, due to stupid reasons, we require users to provide an availability zone because we have to use it for network placement. Because we don't do neutron creation of networks.
With the comma separated thing, you need a patch.
Yeah, we have a patch for that. It's stupid simple. It creates a full just parse this on.
so we actually recommend customers use heat, but I think the people that are really using it are doing like CI stuff with it, tearing up or setting up something and then tearing it down later.
Our people are doing they're using either Jenkins, so they have a Jenkins plugin, or we have Salt, so they're doing stuff with Salt as well. Some people are using Python scripts to go directly to like Yumler just to spin up like their infrastructure and then they put Kubernetes on it. Use Kubernetes instead.
I have a question. At first, when I first started hearing about you, I was thinking sounds like something that's made to spin stuff up for a short period of time and tear it down. Is heat good for spinning up a heat stack and letting it run for months or years?
I have some stacks running for months now, for the Sentinel project. If compute node is very quiet, very peaceful, then there is no reason for, the conditions that would imply recreation of the stacks to happen.
Yeah, go ahead. But I was going to say, I think it depends on whether you need to change those resources that it's using.
Yeah.
If you don't need to change the resources, you're probably fine.
Yeah. And the reason this example used heat, I could have done all that by hand, but the goal I was given was the customer.
Make an example.
Yeah, so the customer can go, I want to see how this heat thing works. Take this and run it and use it. But in theory, as you know, we run this, and we hopefully will never change anything about it. Because if we decide later we don't like the flavor, I'll either probably have to tear down a whole region and rebuild it and switch over to GSO for the load balancer. When heat's not great at changing things like that.
See, we're the exact opposite. We tell our users that instead of patching their servers, we build off of heat. We dish that out right after the patching.
We tell them that too, but they don't listen.
Nobody listens to that.
Randomly start rebooting some stuff.
Yeah.
Take down a couple hundred servers at a time, and then they'll start.
I have given it as a best practice. We're kind of into general cloud talking now, but as a best practice, I've told my customers, if you've never stopped and then started your instance, you're destined to fail because at some point that compute host we'll have a hardware issue, and basically it will go through a stop and a start.
If you
And
can't
I've got
reboot,
customers that have never tried to they haven't even tried to reboot. They'll go in and mess with FS tab and never try and reboot, so they never know that it's going to break. And that's but we kind of have this laundry list of best practices that we've come up with. That's one of the highest ones on the list.
This WordPress thing
It's because of pets.
is a best practice example in code.
But to use, split front and back end, use attached volumes, don't put your data on disk, use your routers, make sure your app spans east-west data center. I also tell the customer, like, we could lose a whole day. Actually, we had a link problem today between east and west data center. And so you could lose all kinds of stuff, like, so.
I had a switch reboot today.
We lost connectivity between our east and west data center, and nobody in the company knew but us.
We're only using like 50% of the packets.
Guy had a questionable link, he's like, I hooked something back in, and then he didn't believe us when we told him when failed. This guy's 5 seconds.
That is one thing he doesn't do very well, though, is cross-cloud, like multiple cloud orchestration. So if you want to do east-west without region, so it's like they're disparate infrastructures, because that's what we do. Every data center of ours is completely separate, standalone OpenStack install, shared nothing, except for Active Directory for you can't use the same heat stack. You have to do two separate heat stacks and orchestrate that together.
So maybe I just like update a reading on this. But in this one, when I tell people we want another region, source your East OpenRC and then rerun it. Because it doesn't handle.
It doesn't, yeah.
Both regions.
We have Swift cross, but everything else is region specific. So it's just like they're different clouds. Did you have more slides or more? One of the librarians actually has some cloud questions, so you guys can keep discussing or grab some cookies. I'm going to bring the librarian in who's actually mentoring a cloud introduction for the public library system. She asked if she could ask a few questions, so I'm going to grab her right quick. You guys can all run away now.
Get the cloud ready. Oh God, the super guys are here.
Did you invest?
Chris, you coming up on the 24th?
Yeah. Well, at the check of what happened. I forgot to tell her about it, so I confirmed on my.
Tell her it's a work event.
It's not a work event though.
Look, if Mike's coming all the way up from the springs,
He doesn't live in the springs.
it's close enough, right? His heart is in the springs.
I wouldn't say that
Is
either.
it some comment or what is it?
I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So our new
I was
office
curious, what part is
is like
From Paraíba, north
470 in
Brazil,
chambers.
in the
It's about as
coast.
far south
Okay.
as you
I
can
can
get.
show you.
I don't know how, it's not Parker, but it's like
Oh,
a half a mile.
that's pretty
from
cool.
Rock High
That's a good
School.
time.
So it's like Laura?
The address is oddly Inglewood.
It's done by the
Are you going?
airport.
Yeah, it's right at the airport, right?
Yeah.
But when I
So-
Google Inglewood, Inglewood's like over by IKEA.
Well, Inglewood is.
Yeah, Inglewood is really spread out. I lived in an area that within a mile you had 14.
East, you can
Oh,
get
okay,
full
okay,
in the
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
there was even one store that.
Where are you
the
from?
first 10 feet was in like Denver
The
County.
more to the east that you can get.
Do you miss the ocean? Or?
Everything was based
That's
on.
a
And it's very warm water
Oh, that's
there.
good.
I love this
There is-
aisle.
This is an interesting picture because this is a hotel. It's a kind of
She ran out of time. Did you have librarian questions?
Yeah.
I don't know. We've gone down there for a couple meetings. They've come up with a couple meetings.
So that's like a charter, it's a charter place.
Yeah, so
for sure it's on this
Most-
street, but it's just
some groups have
some
like
blocks
certain
more
integration
than
plans
Yeah,
that
We
we
definitely
haven't because there's some
yeah.
The ocean.
executives that need to be hired.
So you-
before
You know, the country is huge, so
we,
you
Yeah.
can.
Dave, I have to get a talk on the road.
Well, so I'm kind of mentally signing you up
We were
for
trying to
Kama
get to the
intro,
ocean,
but I was gonna,
Yeah.
but I didn't advertise it, see, so the idea was,
Yeah.
I lived here too. Right?
WordPress, Kawa.
It's gonna be.
So you were in some kind
We started with YouTube.
It depends
How long did
on
you
the
stay
story.
there?
It was just.
Because it's generally terrible.
Scale, horizontal.
Did you get a chance to go anywhere else?
Windows
besides São
rate,
Paulo?
No.
São Paulo is just warm.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
All right,
me
so a couple of announcements / questions. So the first announcement is there is the Denver meetup. I think it's the 30th, and they're in a new location. So if you do go to the Denver meetup, be aware it's at the Galvanized Denver Golden Triangle, something like that. So it's a new location. It's not a Fort Trust anymore. We thank Fort Trust, but they've kind of changed management and they don't allow freeloaders. And they're actually, but they are going to rent Galvanized, but they're getting a really good community service kind of rate. So that's the 30th, and they'll continue meeting monthly. We plan to have a joint meetup sometime in July, probably that 4th week in July. I would like to do another meetup for just our group sometime in July early, probably the first or second week, maybe the first Tuesday after the 4th. So maybe the,
So it's like
the 11th. Yeah, maybe the 11th or something like
talk
that.
about stereotypes, right? This is stereotype that is true.
But I don't have a topic. The topic I would fall back on is to talk about DevStack that night. I know Fisher's on vacation all summer,
Yes.
so I'm not going to ask him to talk about Trove or Talent.
I can talk about Trove if we make progress on the
So no, that's.
You know about this?
My
Vacation from open source.
He's from volunteer jobs.
Yeah, there's so
He's taking volunteer vacation. So
You should
he's
see how careful where you.
Exactly. Exactly. He's failing at his goal, but I'm not. So if somebody has a request for a topic or wants to volunteer a topic for July, early July, let me know. Let me know. I'd like to get one scheduled. We'll try and make it probably.
Well, that's a good
Um,
thing, but then some-
I don't know. I haven't asked Randy about Cable Labs in July.
Yeah.
Hosting
I've never been
the
to
joint
Mexico,
birthday
but
wedding.
my father lives
Should be fine.
pretty much like most
Yeah.
of his life.
So maybe we could host it at TWC in July if we do just
So
a
It's
Colorado
very
one.
different from what you saw here in the
We have a new
Oh, sorry.
It's one of the
Got it. It's still, our office never actually had any label at all on the outside, so we're good.
I could do Trove, but I don't think it'll be ready.
I don't think it would be ready yet.
So
So,
put me for August or something.
It's very
Okay.
different.
we do have one scheduled, we do have one planned for August, no scheduled yet. And also August is probably gonna be the ops meetup. At some point, I think it's gonna end up in New York against, right next to OpenStack days. Basically, that's one of the two possible days. Have you been in on that discussion, the place discussion? Okay. What's that?
I've been to a few spots.
Will you be anywhere?
Let's go.
You'll be at home.
We're having twins in the
So,
north.
the guy really.
Yes, I'll be at home.
You'll be at home, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You'll be at home. If you're trying to get out.
That's all
Yeah,
true.
I used to work in.
So in August, I've got Jim Baker going to talk about Kraton, which is a tool that he uses at Rackspace. But there'll be two topics that time, so it might be Trove and that. It might be Kyle and that.
You do Trove.
Okay, so Trove, it'll be Trove and Kraton.
Well, also, it was about Tuesday.
So I started working.
We're about to say OpenStack.
We can do it.
So I work for a buyer, that's where I was.
Yeah.
doing something.
Okay, yeah.
So we can put you in the fall.
Yeah.
Okay, so also I mentioned earlier before Elijah
Yeah, so
got
I
here,
started coming.
there's a plan for something called OpenStack Days, December 7th and 8th in Salt Lake City. It's called OpenStack Days West, if we get approval to use that name. There's OpenStack Days East is what's going on in August in New York City. And this would be OpenStack Days West with the first city hosting being Salt Lake City. You guys are probably all invited. It's going to be like a mini summit kind of. If you've been, I don't think any of us have been to the OpenStack Days because there's not been one close by. But these are kind of bigger than a meetup. They're like a full day or 2 full days of kind of meetup like things / vendor presentations. Susan's one of the sponsors. I think the other sponsor is Tesora, the people that do Trove. They probably will play about. I'm one of the, I'm not an organizer, but I'm on the committee to approve talks. So if you've got questions about that, as soon as it becomes available, I'll announce it on the meetup. And I think that's all I think I covered all the announcements I had.
It's kind of a long contract. I really like to
so job opportunity.
You're hiring or you
Contract.
contract.
Really,
Yeah, hiring a contract.
Oh, yeah. You're hiring or being
It's not selling.
I got a guy.
Did you talk to people at CU? At one point in the past, there was a grad student at CU that would have been very interested in that.
Okay.
I'll see if I can dig him up and let you know.
Yeah.
We're not hiring at the moment. That's like the first time I've ever said that, because we're in that merger stage, so we don't know what the hell up means yet.
We are hiring.
Okay.
It depends on if you know ironic or not.
Okay. HPE and does it help?
Call HPE.
HPE is probably hiring, but I do know where I can get you an ironic talent. Seriously. Let's talk right after.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hiring.
Oh, you're hiring a bunch of
Staff, everything.
excellent, excellent.
We have like 100 dollars.
And they're like work anywhere jobs, right?
Most all of them are here.
Awesome to hear that. Awesome to hear that. Okay, cool. How's it like to work there? What's it like to work there? Tell us more.
It's great to work from. We don't have to push ropes up there.
This kind of, if you do
You know, our philosophy is upstream stuff.
maybe because in Brazil we're more, we're less graduates and stuff.
Great place to work. It's been awesome.
You've been there 2 years?
Something like this.
3.5 now.
But we had this kind of.
So my question was, for the OpenStack Days West,
Mhm.
is there a call for
Is the
papers?
hero.
Not yet. There'll be a call for papers probably. So we're gonna try and make the website go live like the 20th of June. And that will also come out with a call for presentations. Oh, that was the other announcement.
Yeah.
Call for presentations for the summit in Barcelona went out yesterday. 2 days ago?
And that's my call.
This week. So if you want to talk at the OpenStack Summit in Barcelona and you can talk to companies that pay your way, you'll get a free ticket to the summit if you get a paper select. And maybe some people in this room are on track chairs again this year. Maybe. I wouldn't be
I work
surprised.
in the OpenStack cloud.
So- Could be.
I'm in this team daily.
I haven't been in the past, but I volunteered this.
I get people straight to
And our manager is.
Okay. Any more questions? I didn't, I'm Dave. Chad?
So you.
First time. Hey, hey.
Do a lot of voice stuff.
That's the whole reason I stopped. I wanted to make sure.
We run them on Red Hat.
There are a couple of large, but not really that large shirts up on the table if you want tickets. I don't want to take them home. Take any food you want. The library will eat it, so there's like 4 starting librarians.
I had some.
Your autographed shirts.
Oh, grab a shirt.
I had to read source code.
Where's the library?
She did, she had to leave. She
definitely used to that.
to start after the email, and she'll hit me up in private. Okay, so.
That's like anything you do.
Yeah, don't fill it out.
Well,
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for covering it.
It's always good to get to meet other people and oriented in the same technology. This time was so good for so many people. Which other meetups do you guys participate in regularly? I really love the one on applied trust.
my boss specifically asked me about
Okay, so
I've never met.
okay, so
Regular, you know,
and I've been in sessions with her,
agenda, planning.
but I think she's probably pretty
So
good. She's
it's really.
She made a comment about black hair or
Early
purple hair. So
2014.
yeah. So let me make.
3 years.
I'm gonna
in her
go.
LinkedIn profile.
You and I don't work for the same company, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell
Even for the
her.
technology, idea was all over there. Over there, you'll be stuck in freaking traffic. That's what will happen. If you want to go somewhere, you'll be, and you don't know how long it will take. And in this time, like the time that we all commuted here,
Let me help you.
you
They
everybody is doing the
know
same.
Okay,
They know the route.
For these parties, I drove from Boulder in the morning and then during the day, it's just, it's so good. You can plan your life because you know more or less the time.
Yeah, that's true.
She worked for Yahoo.
Well, speaking of rides, I ride the range.
Oh,
Thanks for
She's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, older, she, a little,
Two of them that are kind of related. Besides your favorite attitude. Is there any
I'm not sure. Just, she'll call it like it is,
I use my favorite.
but sometimes a little
My
turn.
favorite actors knows.
I don't think Julie's quite that way.
So the syntax would be
Okay.
My boss specifically asked me about her 2 days,
yes.
about 2.5 hours.
Okay, so I would say, I know she's working, she's independent, she would
You
be,
can pass it from driving.
no, she's not here.
So
She's,
the driver was
Carolina.
pretty much.
yeah, I was gonna say, she's,
That
She's raw, like,
right,
What
she's
kind
at
of link does it do? Does it actually check what the resources
HQ, but I don't know if she's ever worked for that.
Does it
She's
just
been at
check the
HP
format of the
for, I
gap?
think, 3 years.
So it's not just a
She started running for
it's a
the.
thing, the driver. So it's.
I would
Right,
I would
the
definitely,
heating
if we had,
temperature,
I thought we don't have. any-
red, all that stuff. So yeah,
I would definitely. That's
So
no
it's
question.
more than just, genetic.
But I couldn't give you.
Yeah.
So if you put a type of resource in, like a volume or something.
I ran to,
I
I think we're in the
yeah,
process.
yeah, I don't know anybody else.
That's a good. I can.
The other ones I know, I don't
test
think
this, it gets back to you, or it's like.
Ironic.
I would guess it doesn't go.
You guys have.
I would guess.
So I'm going to the
this
Red
would
Hat
go to
Summit
some
on the last week of June to specifically take ironic training.
Because just think about the
So
scenario.
I
You have a
submitted a thing to
that
the
would receive this as a parameter.
about
So if you
problems.
read,
Like we're looking at trying to
the
replace
information doesn't exist anywhere.
Correct.
I only called out a couple of things.
Yes, yeah. But
And pretty much everything I called out there is.
Security that sits out there. You misspelled security, right?
Devananda. Yeah.
Oh,
That's another
okay.
You
one.
misspelled that.
Yeah.
Like any of the drivers.
I heard he's looking to get out from my.
Let's test. Let me see if I can.
Apparently things didn't continue.
I have several people that might be able to, that have been there now. Yeah, like right before, right after, or right before the summer.
So there's like two different teams at IBM. There's like Marty's team,
Yeah, I don't know.
and Monty's, and then there's someone else. Like they're trying to.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. Plus, I assume there's something.
I was gonna say, I thought most of the people.
Right, but I think there were some, yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Yeah.
I didn't either.
I wonder if JC.
I don't think so. I think he's there.
Come on over, mother trucker.
That's all the news I get.
It will be deleting.
So, sorry, you're in. But that's nice, that, yeah, that's some closure. Yeah, I want to close the circle.
And also, it's nice for her to know that, like, put a thing out there. Hey, if someone who's actually knows something,
Yeah,
it gets around.
it does. Well, it helps. I mean, she never, she would like hit me up at our station. She says, I don't think you know this. Yeah, I know. Oh, okay, well, I'm looking for. Okay, I'll check around and see. So that was me checking around.
It's probably, if you want to tell her,
I will say that GoDaddy is looking at you.
we've already heard of her and my boss was asking, so.
Okay.
Told my boss, asked if I knew her. I was like, I think I've seen her.
Dave.
I don't think I've ever done.
The August meetup, I might have books.
Ah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
I don't know when.
What do you get? 5?
I don't know.
One?
How did you get? How did that happen?
I don't know. Oh, Liz.
Princess Leia? Yeah.
Did she
Liz
like?
was just talking to me about
Okay.
it.
Kind of the Ubuntu relationship
Okay.
background.
We all worked at the
She's a
same
Motu.
company.
Yeah.
I was at HP, and then she's at Canonical. Now it's at Canonical. She went to HP.
Was she ever really at Canonical? I thought she said she never was at Canonical.
Maybe not.
But she was always a Ubuntu editor. Like,
Okay.
Liz had asked Colleen first. and I said, no.
Really?
So, and I will tell you this, I've learned one thing, that writers do not get paid.
I was gonna say, now you can just collect those royalty checks, right?
she may
I'm on a 6 speed. Pretty sure I made 5. I did learn a lot. I learned a lot. I'm like,
came in
I'm talking about
and
release this fresh.
Yeah, the,
Yeah.
Create with the driver.
So I
No, I don't think we created.
the, yeah, I heard.
Do you need physical?
So,
Doesn't matter.
If they're good.
so
I don't
let's
know.
make a really
I
drastic
think
mistake.
we have a very fragmented team and she doesn't want to make it just more and more fragmented. But I think for the right person,
I put all of that live on the internet, guys.